What's up, you beauties? Welcome to High and Wide Hockey YouTube channel, episode 16 of season 7. I'm your host, Jim Iacovone, and I am joined, ladies and gentlemen, by none other than the 2024 Elite 16 Dynasty champion, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Jack Smith. If you're catching us live on YouTube, make sure to smash the subscribe button, hit the alert so you never miss a show. For all the podcast listeners out there, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you're the first in line when the newest episodes drop. Jack, before we get to a little fantasy congratulations or discussion, please tell everybody about Fans of Philly.
It would be my pleasure, Jim. Flyers fans, we've got something special for you today. Looking to take your game day experience to the next level? Then look no further than Fans of Philly. With over 14 years of experience, they're the go-to team for putting together an unforgettable travel packages for the die-hard Philly sports fans. Why Fans of Philly, you ask? Well, let's break that down. These guys have spent years building the best relationship with bars, hotels, teams, transportation, you name it. Every trip they plan gets better, and trust me, they'll make your fan experience top-notch. Whether it's scouting out the perfect hotel, finding the hottest nightlife, or securing the best seats in the arena, Fans of Philly has it all figured out. They know how to make your next trip an absolute blast. So head on over to fansofphilly.com. That's fansofphilly.com and book your next Flyers road trip today. And speaking of that, there's a big Flyers road trip coming up pretty soon to New York against those terrible, drowning Rangers. Jim, do you have the exact date on that?
Yeah, that's January 21st. The Flyers are going to take a trip up the Turnpike to visit the last place in the Metro Division, New York Rangers. There's a lot of room on the bus, guys. So if you want to take a trip to old New York and watch the Flyers, frankly, kick the shit out of the New York Rangers, head over to fansofphilly.com.
Nine, how would you like to invade their arena and be on the happy end of a 9-1 shellacking? And it could be the last time you see Laviolette, if he even makes it, behind the Rangers bet.
There you go. Yeah. I would love to see that. I think the Flyers owe them a couple ass kickings. Kind of kick them while they're down in the basement,
Screw them,
if you will.
those clowns. Take them to task, please.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's January 21st. They're heading up there, guys. So you still have a few weeks to get your tickets. Head on the bus up there to Madison Square Garden. It's always a good time with the Fans of Philly, guys. So, okay. So I mentioned some congratulations. And the main reason that I want to do this is Jack and I are in a pretty serious fantasy football league. It's a dynasty league. The league's over a decade old, pretty big pot, 16 owners. And Jack and I faced off in the championship. Jack ultimately came away victorious. So I wanted to give Jack the congratulations right at the top of the show, face-to-face, man-to-man. Was outclassed, outmatched, and beaten fair and square. So congratulations, Jack.
Jim, that's awfully big of you, because a lot of people would not have done that. I appreciate that. Yeah, our league dubbed it the High and Wide Bowl. I love that. That's awesome. Oh. They did. I had a couple of congratulatory texts that put that. And being football, they have a couple of famous bowls themselves, so I like that. So, yeah, it was cool. Jim had a phenomenal team. Mine came together at the end. I appreciate it, and it's the best feeling in the world.
I forgot you had that fucking thing, dude. You're going to need 2 now, huh?
That was a really shit. Today.
That's funny, man. That's really fun. You couldn't wait to do that. I guess I got to save this spot over here for next year, huh?
After I told you, please don't do that. You're like, oh, you mother heifer. That's going. Trophy's going right there.
Yeah, that's funny, man. So Jack and I had a fun week. We were kind of trying to see who could out jinx the other one there. So fun times, fun stuff, fun league, and congratulations once again. So, all right. Let's get to some Flyers talk here. And unfortunately, the Flyers talk, not as fun. I know the Flyers are doing their thing on the West Coast, a nice 4-0 shutout of the San Jose Sharks. But if you guys have listened to our last couple shows, we've mentioned Sam Ersson, and I can't remember exactly what I said, but Ersson is in his head with the groin injury stuff. It's something that has hampered him in the past, and it seems to be cropping back up. Now, you guys might remember back when Tortorella had announced Urson as the starter for a game and mentioned he's coming off the IR. And Urson didn't end up starting that game. And Tortorella was asked what happened with that. Tortorella said he made a mistake. There's something going on mentally with Urson with all this stuff where the Flyers are going to have to figure out what they want to do. But I believe that's factored into why they're keeping 3 goalies on the roster. We'll see how long they're going to keep Urson out, because I'm going to be honest. Not only does he have what they're called, they haven't really come out and said the injury, I don't think, but I'm pretty sure it's groin again. It's affecting him mentally. And if you're a goalie, right, Jack, you can't really, you can only be focusing on the game and stopping the puck. If you're worried about getting hurt during the game, that's going to affect your focus, I think. Jack, what's going on with the Flyers goaltending position? What's kind of your read on the situation? They got 3 guys up. Kolosov's come in. Urson's hurt and maybe struggling a little bit mentally. What can we make of this?
Oh, it's a tale as old as time, Jim. Flyers issues in goal. I mean, What are you going to do? You had alluded to the Urson thing before. I actually didn't know how much it was in his head as it was. I hate when a goalie gets anything groin. Like, I know that some of the other abdomen stuff is coming around, but forever, I've always hated the groin stuff because it always comes back. I can definitely see it being in a goalie's head. He thinks he's okay. He's not sure. Maybe the team tells him he's okay. He's a little unsure. He's, stretches out to make a nice save or whatever, and he's worried about it pulling. Either it does, or he's half-sees on what he wants to do because he's worried about what happens. And then you get hurt on top of that. It does nothing for your mental health regarding this injury. And it's a bad thing. It's bad because, they had kind of said that Fedotov was out and we haven't seen him at all. It's been very strange. And honestly, Kolosov, it kills me. Yeah, the combined shutout was nice, but he belongs in the AHL. There's too many softies. There's too many. He's young. He needs to. Yeah, I like that he came up and he's played some games in the NHL, but ultimately he belongs in the AHL for some more development and what have you. And until they figure things out between the injuries and not playing that well and things of that nature, and the defense doesn't always do the best job of helping them out, and that's going to get in their heads, and then the goalie's getting the team's head when they give up an early softie or whatever the hell. It is a recipe for disaster. Luckily, they've lost some games here in the last 10, but it hasn't been as bad as I thought it was. If anything, some of the blown leads have been incredibly frustrating. But when we're talking about just the goaltending, sounds like it's going to be under the list of reasons why they didn't make the playoffs, and that'll be right at the top. You're muted.
Thanks, champ. Yeah, I mean, so along with the center position, this was, I think, one of our top 2 things to worry about with the Flyers. And while I do believe in Sam Urson, this injury thing has kind of cropped up. And, once I hear a goalie's kind of struggling a little mentally, with things and something like an injury and worrying about, re-injuring the same, I guess, body part kind of thing, I start to worry about that. Because how can you fully trust a guy who might be in his head? And you also have to worry, is he going to get hurt again? When trust becomes a problem with a goalie, the team in front, I think, also struggles. So who do you go with? Do you go with the guy who's, probably supposed to be in the AHL and Kolosov? You got Fedotov waiting in the wings, who I don't think we fully trust, at least for myself. I don't fully trust Fedotov yet. And look, plain and simple, the goalie position is an issue here. And so I did see this. Zach Steffel chiming in. So Kevin Kurz was asked Kolosov. I did see this. If he thinks Kolosov needs more time in the AHL, if it might help. And Kolosov's response was, it did help. And that kind of, like, what kind of response is that, right?
I love it. I love it.
Down.
I disagree with Kolosov, but Kevin's obviously asking the question as, you need more seasoning. He's saying, I've had all the seasoning I need. And it's like, Okay, they got them. This is what happens when you let somebody strong arm you around, because the players run the asylum now. They get you guys who have never done anything in the NHL, but they're a prospect. It's what they could be. They strong arm the GM and force themselves onto the roster, and now you got this goofy ass situation. It's a shame because he belongs. I'm not saying he needs to go the rest of the year or anything, but he needs to refine his game a bit. He needs to just practice on some things, and it's something all developing players go through. Andre can go down, but you can't. Like, I already don't like that. Like, come on. Like, Andre was playing much better than you were, and now you're big time in an NHL club. I really don't like that shit. That's terrible. I almost started cursing. I'm sorry, but like, I just
You're allowed. You can do whatever you want.
I don't
You won the championship.
yeah. I don't want to like say this, but I don't mean this, but I'm going to say it because that comment irks the shit out of me. Just trade him. Yeah, just trade him. I don't want somebody who dictates what they do on my team. Like, I don't know why this is now an allowed thing. Yeah, I understand that certain players get, certain privileges and what have you, but this is like, I know he was playing pretty well over there, but like, that's why you're over here. That's why you were drafted on the fast track to the NHL. But now we just have to deal with you being here because you'll just, rip up your contract, cry, and put your tail between your legs and go home. It's bullshit, man. That's not how this is supposed to work. And it's only, luckily we're not going for it right now. It's a learning thing, but it's a problem. It's gonna, unless he can play his way out of it, which seems that's gonna be tough. He's a young guy. This is where you would get sent down. So I don't know. I dislike it. They set themselves up for, I don't want to say disaster, but to put themselves in a situation like this by kind of bending to the player's will. And here we are. So I'm really curious to see how this goes. And if things don't get better, are they just going to deal with it, or are they going to actually do something?
It is a pretty hairy situation, right? Like, I think they're almost benefiting in a way by Urson potentially missing some time here. And I think they should keep him out until he's fully healed, until he's confident coming back, so that, number one, he doesn't re-injure. But as I mentioned, he's focused on playing and not focused on not getting hurt. So as hairy of a situation as it is, where you're carrying three goalies, they almost kind of lucked out, so to say. And I don't mean to make it sound like it's a good thing that Urson's hurt, but the decision has been made for them. Like, okay, well, we still have two goalies in Kolosov and Fedotov. So while we are carrying three, we still have two that we can play while one guy's hurt. Does that make sense? Not that it's like an out card for them, but it kind of is.
Well, it makes perfect sense because we already know, like, what was kind of alluded to, and even Russ Cohen said that last week. We've said it before, like signing Fedotov, like a part of that, what he got was the whole Michkov thing. We all kind of know that. It's like one of the worst kept secrets. But that and the issue with Urson and between his head and his actual injury, that whole thing, like, that's another reason to have him around and not send him down. And we're hoping he could, maybe if Urson showed he could stay consistently healthy and not play poorly, and more of like what we're used to before he played 900 games in a row, then maybe you'd make a decision with Kolosov or Fedotov or something. But we didn't get too many games into Urson coming back before, like you said, he comes back. It's already shady. It's already iffy. And now how many games later? And now this, like, was it even 10 games, if that? And he didn't play every single one of them. So, like, you're going to need to see like a good solid amount of games where you feel comfortable doing something like that. And you're not calling Peterson back up. Who knows what happens with Fedotov? I don't think anybody claims him or anything, but like, they don't have a whole lot of options in that regard. So yeah, it does make sense. It's a shame where Urson was probably he's your best NHL goalie. He's having the injury issues. The other two guys are a roll of the dice. Yeah. And unfortunately, they just completely affect the rest of the team it's really the softies. It's not even poor overall games. So sometimes that shit just happens, but I've seen them in games where things are okay. They give up a goal. They're still okay. And then they give a bad goal and then everything just goes off the rails. It's like, I've seen them react when they've given up. Hey, we give up a power play. And that's another thing is the penalty kill has been shit. The penalty kill has been a real problem. Goalie's obviously got to be your best penalty killer. The two go hand in hand. Now they can't take penalties because they're scoring. Teams are scoring within the first 10 seconds, 20 seconds of some of these power plays. Like, it's stupid, and it's so demoralizing to the rest of the team. And it's if they were trying to win this year, there'd be moves being made. It'd be a problem. Luckily, they're not. But I don't want them to get downhearted every game. And I really haven't seen that yet, but I'm seeing it a little more often than I like. So hopefully this win against San Jose will spark something, but who the hell knows?
Yeah, it's going to certainly be a situation to keep an eye on. And, it kind of leads into one of the other bigger topics on tonight's show. And the Flyers are currently, I think, just a few points. I want to say 4 points out of a wild card spot. Let me just bring up the standings. I just had it up here. Wild card. So currently the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Ottawa Senators occupy the 2 wild card positions. Tampa Bay has played 34 games and they have 42 points, while the Ottawa Senators have played 36 games and have 40 points. Meanwhile, the Flyers have played 38 games and have 38 points. So they're 4 points out, but Tampa Bay has 4 games in hand and Ottawa has 2 games in hand. Not to mention the Penguins and the Blue Jackets each have so the Flyers have 9 regulation wins, and this is going to come back to bite them. They have the least amount of regulation wins in the Eastern Conference by a lot. So the 2 teams that I mentioned that are in front of them, Columbus and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has 11 regulation wins. Columbus has 13. Now, I think it's way too early to be, talking about regulation wins and points and things like that. But that's going to factor in, come playoff time or trade deadline time, which is really the point that I want to get to here. If the Flyers goaltending is going to sabotage this season, as we mentioned, maybe a month or so ago. What do you think, Jack? Like, if they're this close to a playoff spot come March, do they add? What do you think they do at the deadline? Let's talk about this. Do you think that they add or subtract, and what do you want them to do next?
I think they do probably what they did last trade deadline. I think they subtract. I doubt they add even the Eric Johnson that they added at the last trade deadline. I don't think that happens, and I think it's the right move. This team has so many issues to legitimately think because you're in a wild card spot, potentially, probably won't even be, you're on the bubble, to, oh yeah, we're in a rebuild, but we're going to add. It would, again, like if they did it last year, it'd be a spit in the face to the fans, what they told the fans. And it's all about transparency with this front office, which I appreciate, and stick to the plan. If you're playing that, I've seen people say this season is like a step back because they're not playing as well as they did last year. That's bonkers to me. That is a failure to understand the fundamentals of a rebuild just because they had some players from previous regimes who are playing really well and nobody saw that Sean Walker shit coming, because they were so good last year. Oh, well, now we just have to go. Then they would have added if that was that they had to be better this year. You can't look at it that way. Like, it's all about developing these individual players. That's the main thing you have to focus on here. So anybody who's not going to be here in your future plans should be at least offered at the trade deadline, made available. And if, God forbid, you have the balls to dangle somebody out there, like, I don't know, a Cam York or something like that, to make a really big trade, which is very unlikely for the trade deadline, but not impossible. That's what they should be doing. There's certain players, if they're, especially anybody in a 1-year deal who is definitely not part of your future, they should be gone for whatever you can get. There is no reason to not move anybody. There's no reason to add anybody. It's a rebuild. This is what rebuilding teams do. And if they're banking on, because based on what I've heard from Briere and really Keith Jones, and I don't want to chop up what he said exactly, so I'm not quoting him, but it was along the lines of, we want to draft the next Michkov. That's why we have all these picks, and it's like, okay, well, Michkov, even at 7 was a hell of a situation to get him there, but that just makes it sound like they want to take as many shots at the lottery as possible, not make big trades. Now, that could just be posturing. I don't know, but the point remains, add more picks. If that is your mentality, you need as many lottery tickets as possible. You don't add, You move on from who you don't need, and then you figure things out. You go from there because we know this team needs a number one center in the worst possible way. At least with the goaltending, there are two prospects, one major one who's already mentioned, Zvergan, that we know are at least coming. Like it's already been addressed in a way. And it's good because goaltending takes the longest. So at least that's addressed. They have to get a number one center in the worst possible way. Watching Couturier starting to become painful. I love the guy. Jim, what do you think he's been in his last 10 games? What do you think his stats are?
Not great.
1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. And I know the underlining numbers are, are okay, not good for him. But dude, I feel like Noah Cates, the way he's been, and obviously this is a hot streak, but it's like, Jesus Christ, what you're getting out of Noah Cates is what you hope to get out of Couturier, and you need a number one and a number two center at this rate. There is no reason to be adding anything with the fundamental building blocks you need for a good team. There is zero reason to add, zero reason. And not to mention, they're worse off this year than they were last year. Last year, they were well into a playoff spot. So, it was actually shocking they fell off the way they did. This year, they're already struggling. There's zero reason to add it to trade deadline.
Yeah, I'm leaning that way too. And if the goalie situation was a little bit more shored up, you could say, okay, well, they got a shot. But I don't see Kolosov and Fedotov turning things around in such a drastic way that the Flyers can compete for a wild card spot, and while it would be nice for some of these guys to get a taste of the playoffs, I'm just not sure that it would benefit them to make it. I think it would be probably a quick exit, an early round exit, most likely first round. So
most likely.
Yeah,
they could also add and still miss, and that's just really stupid. How dumb would you see if they added last year? At least I could understand it a little bit. They're really in the playoffs, and again, if you're adding, you're not giving up a first round pick or anything of significance. So what are you really adding? But you never know. Sometimes guys on a 1-year deal, teams just want to get something. Yeah, maybe you get lucky there. Maybe there's some old Brock Nelson, something like that. You know what I mean? I don't even know where the Islanders are in the standings. I just know that they people are pretty upset with Wah. I think he pulled the goalie and they were in their own zone and the other team scored immediately. Something like that. So I don't know, but something like that. 30, what is he, 34, 30, somewhere there, years old, Brock Nelson. So something like that, it would still cost you a little penny, but it just doesn't make sense because last year, okay, I don't like it. Fans would freak out, but they were a playoff team, and you probably keep Walker at that point too, which is kind of bonkers. But this year, it's okay, say you do that move, and you can still miss the playoffs. How stupid is that? And I know you have a better understanding at the trade deadline, so maybe by the time you get there, I don't know, what are they going to do? Figure out their goaltending stuff, and they're really in a position like that? I don't trust it. Even if they did, I with their goaltending and some other asset and some other facets of the game, I just feel like the wheel is so close to always coming off. Is it really worth investing in just to get these young guys in playoff time? No, not this year. Not this year.
Well, I could certainly rattle off a list of at least I think 5 players that could potentially be moved or sold off the roster here, and maybe we can discuss some of these names. So I think the most obvious name heading into the trade deadline that could be potentially moved would be Rasmus Ristolainen, right? You would assume that he's going to garner some attention, some trade speculation. It was already rumored to be, teams were already looking at him. He made Team Finland for these 4 nations. Big right-handed shot defenseman. He's shored things up on the defensive end. All we heard about was playoff Risto. He's yet to be in the playoffs at any point in his career. Hasn't even been close. But this is a guy playoff teams will look at. In my opinion, that contract's going to be easier to move in the offseason, but I'm assuming we'll still garner attention. Now, I know we brought up Ristolainen, and I'll get to the rest of our guys after I ask you, Jack. Is Ristolainen somebody that you would move at the deadline, and what would you be looking to get for him?
Yes, I would absolutely be looking to move Ristolainen, and I think a lot of people are coming around on potentially getting a first-round pick. Probably wouldn't be in 25, it'd be later. That would be great. I would be pleasantly surprised. I don't think I'd be blown away. I'd be pleasantly surprised if they were to get that and not have to eat anything or take on a bad contract. Although I would definitely take on a bad contract as long as it was like 1 year, for to get a first round pick for Ristolainen. I mean, my God, I just want out of the contract. I just want this team to have money because they're going to need it, whether it's defense center, left wing, something of that nature, re-signing their own guys. Like, I want the money. And Ristolainen has looked pretty well. And there is a factor, like, going into next year with the goaltending being as bad as it is, and Zavragan and Bjornsson are nowhere near the NHL roster. Do you pull a guy that good on your defense, which will only ultimately hurt your goaltending potentially, which demoralizes the whole freaking team? Now, that's kind of down the rabbit hole. Ultimately, I think we have enough defensemen we need to see here anyway. I'm not going to worry about that too much. Plus, opportunity to get out of the contract and potentially get a first-round pick for Ristolainen. Talk about Twilight Zone. Like, I would take that all day. But I'd also take less to move him. I would take a second and change. Like, he's the number one guy I'd be looking to move at the trade deadline.
So you want the money off the books if there's an opportunity to do it.
There's too many factors. Like, what if he gets hurt next year? He's already shown he's pretty, I don't say he's injury prone, but he's starting to get nicked up. This year's been good. This is solid, and I don't know if outside of this coaching staff, he's going to keep that up. He probably will to an extent, but look, what you have now is what you dreamed of. Just take it. He's no matter how you play it, he's not a part of your future. So you might as well just take what you can get.
All right. Yeah. So, okay. I think we agree. As much as I have enjoyed watching Ristolainen play this year, I don't want to say even enjoyed, because that implies that he's been a pleasure to watch kind of thing. He hasn't really been. He's just the turnaround's been fun, and see him, kind of even grow a little bit more has been fun to see.
Well, I'll say this: the turnaround has been almost legendary. Yeah. Like, there's gonna be a textbook about him and the coaching someday. But he does a lot of things that I like the Flyers defensemen of old had done, which he didn't do his first go around. He's bullying people at the end of games sometimes. He's pushing people around. And he just looks like a smarter hockey player than when we first got him. And a guy of that size playing with a brain, that is very – but this is why you could potentially, with his contract, get a first-round pick because of everything we're discussing. So that's why. That's I'm also a draft guy. We're in a rebuild. How old's Risto now? You just make the move. You just do it and move on.
Yep. Yeah, so one of the things that I like to bring up with Ristolainen is – so I didn't like the player when they traded for him. I was pissed off when they doubled down on him, old Chuck Fletcher. But when they traded for him and he first started playing, he was still making those hits where he was completely taking himself out of the play. Doesn't happen anymore. He's much smarter defenseman. So, they can definitely market him, and I don't think it's insane to ask for a first round pick for Risto. I'm wondering if it's just going to be a tougher in-season trade to do because that money's on the books for the next 2 years. Maybe it's an easier off-season deal, but
I guess it depends on how you look at that contract. The more I think about it, with the cap going up, if you're a team that believes in him and you're looking for that kind of grit, especially in the playoffs, and I don't want to say smarts because that makes him sound like he's a genius out there, but he's definitely smarter than what we've seen.
Yeah.
5.1 for what, 3 more years?
Yeah. I believe it. I want to say it's 2 more.
That's even better. That's not that bad. It really isn't. Is it really going to, what team in the playoffs looking for a defenseman of that nature, would really be run down by that move? Their cap. The only team that ever comes to mind is Toronto, who I think would want him, because I don't know the cap situation off the top of my head, but they just have so many high-priced guys out there. Yeah. I feel like that they could be an issue. But, I could see them probably figuring it out, although they did just bring in some guy like Tanev or whatnot. But, there's plenty of teams that would want a guy like Risto. So, I don't see that contract with the way he's playing. And with each and every game, it's looking more and more likely like this is the guy. If you're not risking it, it just seems more and more likely these rumors we're hearing. There's a lot. It's pretty early. We heard these rumors about Risto. The guys his play didn't fall off. He didn't get injured. Like usually those guys you hear about when it does get to the trade deadline, they usually get moved, and it's usually for a pretty penny. The contract could be something. Teams might use it to get, maybe give up less. Hopefully, he calls their bluff or gets a bidding war going. But you have to make that move.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, let's get to some of our other names on this little short list that I have here of guys that the Flyers are going to have to make some decisions on, and maybe it's not guys they really want to move yet, but it's getting to be that time. How much Morgan Frost, Jack, on pace for another 40-point season, and there's not another player in the league with more potential than Morgan Frost who's going to put up 40 points every season. And he's got 17 and 34 on pace for just around 41 again this year. And we all know that that's not going to cut it as a second line center in the NHL. His contract's up after this year. I believe he's going to be an RFA.
One more year.
One more season. So technically the Flyers still control him, but what's to be expected? Let me just check the age. He's 25 years old. Will be 26 in May. Do we still want to keep him around for another year just to fill the center spot? What do you want to do with Morgan Frost, Jack?
Ultimately, I think I move him. But I'm not giving him away. Mm-hmm. I don't know him alone. I don't think player for player deal. I don't know what that gets you. I don't know if it's worth it. I think we're all going to be underwhelmed if that were to happen. Love for him to go in some kind of package. Love for that to happen. I don't see it. He's doing what he did last year to an extent. Like he's a slow starter, picks it up in the middle of the year, seems to still really get a lot of his points against lesser talent. It's tough, man. I just don't see them committing to a player who's that still in some way unknown. I know Torts doesn't like him. I think a little of that is unfair, but I also think that it took him way too long to march into his office and, take a crap on his desk and demand playing time. Like, I just feel like players, he's too, I don't want to say immature, but kind of immature. Things we've heard about him in the past. He's just ultimately, at the end of the day, I think he's going to be a solid NHL player for some team on their third line who can sometimes play with better talent. But you'll look at what you saw in him and say, yeah, Morgan Frost was a nice player, had the tools, couldn't put it together. I'd rather, if there's something available, move that now before you're just left with nothing but parts, and then it's like you get nothing for the guy.
Yeah. So this was a couple weeks ago when I was kind of asking around about Morgan Frost a little bit, and what I got back is basically teams are. I don't want to say teams are lowballing the Flyers because I'm not sure how much Morgan Frost is actually worth. Right. There are some Flyers fans that'll tell you he's a very good player, and if you trade him, you're going to need a second round pick or a second and a fourth or whatever. Teams aren't coming close to that for Morgan Frost. That's
rough.
So the Flyer teams will take him. They'll take him if they can get him for cheap. But the Flyers aren't going to give him away. And I don't know if they're in a position to give him away because someone's got to play center, Right.
So, and that's part of it too. It's like we came into the season like, if Frost plays with Michkov, because on paper, it makes sense that they would be on the same line. Oh, we're going to trade. They don't even play together. Like he's not even putting up the kind of points we even, kind of jokingly, but like there is a possibility if his skills click and Michkov click and things of that nature click. It's like he's not going to come anywhere near any of that stuff. So we're still, with Frost on the team, we're still talking about a number one and a number two center. Yeah. With how long he's been here, we should not – number two shouldn't be on the board anymore. We should just be trying to acquire number twos. I mean, Luchenko, knock on wood, as long as he keeps his trajectory going, is going to replace Frost anyway. At that point, third and fourth line centers, you have Cates as it is. Couturier might end up being your third or fourth too with his contract. Where does he fit outside of the now? So don't give him away if you're getting junk back. But do I see him like being with this team when they're making playoff runs? I really don't. I don't know how you could.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what they do there, because if they're in a pinch, like I said, they kind of just need warm bodies at the center position. It would kind of suck for fans to watch the same old. But since he's got one more year of being an RFA, he's not really doing much this year, so he's not going to command like a big long-term contract or anything like that. Just give him they have the option to give him the one more year and then move on. And it's this year is a contract year for him, and he's on pace for the same old.
Every year is a contract year for him.
It seems like it, doesn't it? 25 years old, going to be 26. So, I think hockey. He's entering hockey prime years. Like these are the prime years for Morgan Frost to
starting to be. What do they say? Like when you get to around this age, maybe a couple years older, you are who you are.
Yeah.
What is Morgan Frost now? Like how much longer do we have to do? There's been nothing but opportunity at the position he plays.
Yeah.
And I understand that he hasn't had the best talent, but he's got more than enough talent, especially this year. And he's got the rest of this year to really change some minds. And hey, last 10 games, 4 goals, 3 assists. Yeah. But like, come on. Do we really see that happening? I'll be shocked. So he doesn't play enough with players I thought he'd be playing with that fit his skill set. He's with Tippett. I feel like Tippett just does his own thing anyway. You know what I mean? Like Tippett's got a Tippett. And he's just, Frost is there. So I don't see I just don't see it. If you can, it sucks they're getting lowballed, but if I were another team, I'd be doing the same thing. I'd be like, show me why I should offer you anything legitimate. What do you point to? A couple of highlight reel plays. That's not his game. Like every now and then it is, but those are few and far between when he like really has a nice play. Mostly it's goose eggs, disappears. So
he's like a player that I could see a team like Seattle taking a shot on, like how they're picking up guys like Kako Capo or whatever his name is. They're kind of picking up the scraps from other teams. He's a guy I could see going out to Seattle, to Utah. Chicago was mentioned a month or so ago as a potential trade candidate there. He'll go to a team like that maybe he'll put up some points playing more minutes on bad teams kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The Flyers are a bad team, and he's not putting up that many points with the Flyers. But
that's my thing. Like, and they're looking for young guys to take the next step, and he's the number one position where there's no logjam, and he's not doing it.
Yeah.
So I can. He strikes me as that kind of player. Like, will be a decent player on a bad team, and you're just like, he had the tools and just couldn't put it together, and this is what you got.
Yep. All right, so let's move on. So we covered Rasmus Ristolainen. We covered Morgan Frost. Next on the list here, fresh off a brand new haircut, Jack. Joel Farabee going with the buzz cut. You think that's going to help his game at all, Jack?
Well, we'll see. He's been pressing, man. Last 10 games, 2 goals, 2 assists. He's been, I don't know, man. He doesn't even look like the Farabee from last year. I guess the games are just officially too hard. We'll see. I'm going to obviously give him the rest of the year. I can't be shocked he was moved to the trade deadline, but he is somebody. I know that he's like their, one true scoring left wing. You'll figure it out. Like, if you can get him in a package or move him for something with all the people you have at wing, I think this offseason is the time to do it. Don't see him freaking out. Or I saw something like he's making $5 million, something like that. Yeah. Like his play, like he's not even living up to the current contract, which I understand you're supposed to grow into, but he's had it for at least a couple of years now, right? Last year, maybe even the year before that. He's not a $5 million player. He's a left wing. That's like one of his better things I add. He's had flashes. I was hoping we see more of the player we saw at the beginning of last year. I think he understands that. Nothing. Like not a whole lot, man. Like he's really got to get it going. to change people's minds. And just he's not a deadline deal, although you never know. But I don't see him with the future of this team either. I put up a fight for him in the offseason, tried, but what did he give me back after that? Like
6 goals in 38 games.
Jesus. Like, come on, man. 6 goals in 38 games, and a lot of times he's playing with Michkov and whatever center they put him with, and it's just it ain't work. And look, he would benefit from a true center too. Like, I don't know if Cooch is doing a whole lot of help with him. I don't think he plays with Frost too often. So it's like, he's not on the Cates line, or I'm sorry, so I think that's where he has been his best with Cates and Brink. But when I think of that line, it's definitely Cates, Brink, Farabee. So I'm hoping that maybe he can come around. There's plenty of time, but there's so much more negative and wanting of more than there is the good stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if teams lowballed the Flyers on him too.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. Like his trade value was pretty high last year, but he looked like he was rounding into the player that they need Joel Farabee to be before the last few months of last season. And if you wanted to kind of go with he's out of gas towards the end of the year last year, let's give him a fresh start this year and see what he does. While Tortorella's sort of sticking up for him and saying, his play's been fine, the goals and points just aren't coming. I'm not sure how much I would agree with that when I watch Joel Farabee play. And I'm not sure that you can use him. I mean, maybe you could still use him in a let's say a Zegras type trade. Zegras is obviously hurt right now, but he hasn't had the best season, and his time is clearly, in my opinion, up in Anaheim. Now, I don't know if it's the perfect trade that the Flyers should make, but it's going to have to be for a guy like that, I think, with Farabee, because he's not blowing the doors off anywhere here. It's going to have to be a change of scenery trade. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes. And I think he should go somewhere where there's probably going to be a decent center, and you're going to see a little uptick from him, but I don't see him becoming any kind of like stud. I just don't think it's there.
No. Yeah, they have a lot of middle six players in their forward group, and when you play against teams like they're going to be playing against in Vegas and Toronto, who have legitimate, top 6, top line guys, you start to see the difference in talent there. So we'll see what happens. They have a lot of draft picks coming up in this draft coming in the summer of 2025. Do they make moves for more? The guys we're talking about in Ristolainen and Farabee have years on the end of their deals. So a trade, in my opinion, a trade with those guys is harder in season, but you never know. You never know. I think Briere's been a little creative in the past, so we'll see. But I think those trades might be better suited to happen in the offseason. Frost could be a different story, though. Did I have anybody else on this list here? Nobody that I think realistically would be moved. We talked Cam York in the past. I don't know that the Flyers are necessarily looking to move him, but we discussed reasons on why it would make, I think, some logical sense to move him if the right deal came about, right?
Yeah, and I all that points to the offseason, and this is a year where you want to find out who you have, and these are two of the biggest question marks this team has been Frost and Farabee, and York. That was more of he's expendable because we felt what we had coming up and what we currently have, and you got to give to get. If you're getting low ball for Frost and potentially Farabee, how are you going to get anything? How are you going to trade anything? So that's where York's name pops up. And I would not shock me if there's one of those names, if York were to be theoretically moved, is added with York to a trade. We're going to find out who we have and what we need to fix. And this pretty telling. I don't know what they're talking about up there in the front office, the brain trust, but you cannot look at this team and think and they're going to see the whole picture, but you got to be like, shit, man, like, what are we going to do with Farabee? Like, there's some decent games there, but like it's replacement level stuff. It's tough. Like I hate hearing he had a ton of value, but now I don't know how many players are they going to do this with? How many players they're gonna stretch out like, well, value, but we don't want to lose that value, so we're not going to trade anybody. God forbid we have any balls, and then they lose the value, and then we're just screwed. Like, I'll give Briere a little bit of, I'll give him a little bit of leeway because he just took over this. He's been in a little over a year and a half. But this can't go on forever.
Yeah, I mean, hey, as much as I'm not sure, I agree with that. This is the market that he's in. Right, there's going to be pressure to make moves, so it kind of comes with the territory. Oakham, you can tell he listens to the show. Neil Andre makes Cam York expendable.
Hell yeah.
Let me ask you a question, Jack, and viewers, listeners, please feel free to respond in the comments. Obviously, Cam York is also due for a new contract after this season. He's currently making $1.6 million on the second year of a 2-year deal. I believe he's also going to be a restricted free agent this summer. What do you feel confident paying Cam York? There was a rumor that before he signed his last deal, he didn't want to sign a long-term contract. So the Flyers wanted to lock him up. I'm going to assume at a reasonable price for an extended period of time. Let's call it 4 to 5 years. Right. And without saying that York's a bad guy for doing this, he would have preferred to sign the bridge deal, which he eventually did sign, 1.6 for 2 years. Would you feel comfortable paying Cam York, if the Flyers paid Cam York $5 million, let's say they matched the Risto contract, 5.1 over 5 years. Would you be okay with that at 23 years old for Cam York?
I think I would be. I think it's a contract he can he's probably already somewhat close to being worth, if not already. And I only think he's going to get better at being 23 years old and what we've seen from him. God forbid his offense comes around. That'll be a phenomenal contract for us. I feel like he's asking for significantly more, especially now. After the bridge deal, he's going to have to essentially. But that's a number I'd be fine with. 5 years, he'll be 28 at the end of that, 29, $5 million. If you trade Risto, you're replacing it, and you're not even adding his 1.6 he has right now. Like, it's also a very tradable contract if he were to be in trade talks. So I don't. It's not something I think that like he maybe this year has earned, but his overall play, his potential, and his youth, I think that gets him that, and they take those things into account.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I don't know that I see them trading York, but I sure can make a point for why I think they should. So
look,
interesting stuff.
At some point, Jim, they're gonna have to make some trades, and I'm not talking about, it. And this goes for our fantasy leagues too. I've always found it a lot easier to trade something of value away and just, reap the benefits than it is to go buy something, and there's very few movable assets they have outside of first round picks, that they have that are just valuable to move because we have too many Farabee Frost situations where you're getting lowballed. The only way, and they should draft centers. Don't get me wrong. They should definitely draft centers, but that should not be the only way they try to find a number one center, just purely the draft. They should draft. They should maybe look at people who have had bad years. I think it need a change of scenery, and they should make freaking trades, potentially, free agency. I don't see that happening. And they should make trades. They should do all of those things, anything possible, not just one, not just stick with one, like do everything. And it just when you look at the assets on this team and where your strengths are, it just makes too much sense that York would be involved in some kind of deal for a potential center. I don't know who that center is. It seems every year there's new crop of names. Like, it's not just the Zegras show. Like, we don't even talk about Zegras half as much unless we're throwing out a theoretical trade, so like it's going to happen. It's possible. And I hope that they finally, like this, that's why I come down to it. I'm like, I don't want to say this is it, but they really start to need to make trades because not that they don't have time. I don't want anybody to develop into a Farabee Frost situation where the value just gets sucked away. And now you have a shell. Now, I don't see that happening with York, but like, come on, 23 years old. What team wouldn't want to bring in a defenseman like that? The defense is so hard to find. He's so young. He's proven he can play at the NHL level. He's probably only going to get better. Like, if you find him expendable you got Bonk, you got Andre, Gronz was pushing. You have first round picks. Like, you're going to probably take a defenseman with one of those picks. He's expendable. Go get what you need. Maybe they're waiting for the right guy. I don't know, but it makes too much sense.
Speaking of value, Scott Lawton has 9 points in his last 9 games. Now, 4 of those points came in one game, but he currently has 5. I'm sorry, he might have 11 points, 5 goals.
5 goals, 6 assists.
6 assists in his last, what did I say? It was 9 games, 10 games?
10 games, yep.
He's playing some tougher teams in Los Angeles. He's got a goal and assist there. And he's about to play the Vegas Golden Knights and the Toronto Maple Leafs. I believe that's a back-to-back split with Toronto. I mean, I know your answer, if they should trade Lawton or not, but his value's high now. If there's a team calling on Lawton, there's a lot of season left here, a lot of runway left till we get to the trade deadline. If somebody's calling on Scott Lawton, Jack, what's it take for you to pull the trigger?
So this is, for me, this answer kind of changed a little bit. Seeing what he can do and just understanding more of how he is with the team and how they look up to him and what he really means to the team. I think it's definitely going to take, and I don't know if they offer this. I think that ship maybe has sailed, but I'm definitely on the first round pick train. You can't turn that down. Now, if it's a second round pick, I think I might be out on that. I really do, because it's going to, if say it's trade deadline, like that's what we're discussing, right? Trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a late second round pick unless somebody has an earlier one. So do I really want like a glorified third round pick for what Lawton brings to the table? Like, they have center issues. He's the guy they put on the top line, like with connecting. Like, that's where we're at. And I'm not saying he's going to put up these stats all year, because we know he's not. But I don't see what this team gets out of losing Lawton with that locker room, those young crop of players, for a late second round pick. Maybe it's multiple picks. Then we can talk. If it's 2 second round pick, I don't know. But like first round pick is always a yes for me outside of a unique situation. But like later picks after that, with how low the hit rate is, I don't know. I think I'm out to just let him be a Flyer for life, I guess. I mean, he's a de facto captain, and it is what it is.
I can appreciate that perspective, because I think it's correct, for, like you said it. So I'll just repeat it. What he brings to the table, a late second round pick, what does that do for you? It's an asset, sure. But the Flyers already have 3 first. I think they have 6 picks in the first 2 rounds of this year's draft. 3 first round picks and 3 second round picks.
It's like they're going to have, in like the first 45 picks, they're going to have 6 picks. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. So they don't really need another pick unless they're looking to, to put a package together and go from 6 picks to like 3 picks or something like that for higher picks. I don't know.
And that's kind of rare. I mean, I'd almost rather see them trade a first round pick and Lawton to move up or something like that. Or
sure.
Who the hell knows? If they're going to move Lawton, it's got to be significant or a part of a significant deal. I can't see them just taking picks and being, hey, sure, maybe, if it's NHL, I'm playing it. I do that. But like, seeing what I know now about his presence to the locker room and the team and these young guys, it's appreciative, and I wouldn't mind him being around. Now, it's only because he has, I believe, 1 more year left.
Yeah.
So then next year, I think you just got to move on. Then it's like, look, these guys got to take over now. Like, thank you for your service. We kept you around much longer than we thought we would. So unless he falls off a cliff and you're just like, oh, we can bring him back for, I'd seen it joked like, oh, you want to be a Flyer for life, huh? Well, they offer him like an 8-year deal, 1.5 per. You know what I mean? Yeah. So he gets paid, but he's a Flyer for life. who the hell that shit? I think they're Colton Sissons or whatever his name did that for Nashville, like something crazy, like a long-term contract for a third, fourth round guy. Very, very, very rare. Don't see that happening. So look, if they do move him, and apparently Briere said to this last year, it's like we're not moving you unless they hit a certain threshold. That threshold's high. It's a very high. We have a different value for you to this team than you to the rest of the league. And at first, I was a little like eye roll to that, especially when I heard they were turning down like a potential trade with a first round pick. That'll make me upset. But now, if it's Colorado's interested, they're going to give you a late second when they play in the Cup. It's like, oh, great, the 61st pick, wonderful. Like, no, I'm not. I'd rather keep them at that rate.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, we're coming towards the end of our show here tonight, and the Flyers are still on their season-long 6-game road trip, of which they are currently 2-2 with victories over the Cutter Gauthier-led Anaheim Ducks.
Oh, he played in that game? Cutter played? I didn't even.
You missed him, huh?
Even know. I guess I blinked and I missed him because talk about a useless fart. I didn't see nothing out of that clown.
Imagine saying to the public the day before that game, "Oh, I've had this game circled on my calendar," and just totally not showing up. What a fucking embarrassment that is.
You mean like before that one I don't know if it was college or some kind of tournament game when he was like, yeah, I'm going to get a couple tonight, and he was held off the score sheet. Yeah. Like he is everything in a sports comedy villain. Like
he is.
Except for like even Shooter McGavin was at least good at golf. You know what I mean? But this guy's a clown. Like look, Drysdale may not work out. I'm still glad he's not here. He's such a clown. Like at first I hated him. I was angry, and now I'm still am to an extent, but now I'm just like, you're just a goof out there, dude. Like they're bad. Their goalie deserves a medal. Like, was it Dot? I actually have to check. I think I may have a, how's it called? The young gun of him. I'm like going to take that out, put it in a case because he's been playing that well. Yeah, he's the only, because they're dog shit out there offensively. Like, and Cutter, you think how many points do you think he has on the year, Jim?
I want to say he's got between 10 and 15, but that seems high.
Isn't that sad? That seems high. Let's see. It is high for him. So in 36 games, Jim, he has 5 goals and 12 assists for 17 points.
Oh, okay. That's close, I guess.
Yeah, not bad. 36 games, 5 goals. That's what stuck out to me. 5 goals.
Those are Morgan Frost numbers.
Oh, shit. You said it.
Just saying.
Remember we had him and he's like, oh, he might play center. He's this, that, the other thing. What? Why? If I'm a teammate of his, I'm like, you're a fucking moron. Like, shut up. Stop talking. Like, play, then talk. I'm telling you, that's the new age. Not everybody, but a lot of these young kids today, man. I'm sure him and Kolosov may be best buds. Hey, we'll just tell them what we want, and they'll just do it. Because even though we've never played a game in the NHL, we have clout because we have potential. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure. So we mentioned wins over the Anaheim Ducks and the San Jose Sharks, led by Macklin Celebrini, who did not record a point. Matvei Michkov also did not record a point, but the Flyers won 4-0. So
he broke his streak, though. He broke his streak. He had a goal in a sense against the Kings, Michkov. So that was these past 4 games. That was the most important thing. Seriously, it was 5 game scoreless streak, I believe.
Something like that.
So getting a goal and an assist, and it wasn't a lucky goal. He always tries to, if the goalie's like out of position or trying to get in position, and he's got the puck behind the net, he does try to bank it a lot. So that was not as lucky as you may think. It was a smart heads-up play from a player who does that shit. So 2-point night, I'll take it.
So I mentioned the Flyers are 2-2 currently on the road trip. They have 2 more games coming up against Vegas and Toronto. They'll be in Vegas tomorrow night, January 2nd, start time 10 p.m., and they'll be in Toronto Sunday, January 5th. That's a Sunday 7 p.m. start time. The Flyers end, I guess it's considered the first half of the year. They're 38 games into the season. 17-17-4, and they start the new year at Hockey 500. They next face, as I mentioned, the Vegas Golden Knights, in Toronto on Sunday, and they're finally back home Tuesday, January 7th to take on Toronto again. And they have Dallas that Thursday. So 4 tough games in a row before they get to take on the Anaheim Ducks and Cutter Gauthier in Philadelphia on Saturday, January 11th. So tough slate of games for the Flyers. I don't want to say this is a make or break stretch, but if they go, let's say, on a 4-game losing streak, it's going to be a little tough. The schedule doesn't really get much easier to finish out January. It's a lot of games. They're playing every other day kind of thing against Metro Division teams. They play the Devils 3 times this month in a span of 12 days, 11 days. They get both New York teams in that span, Detroit again. It's a tough January schedule for the Flyers. So this next slate of games, Jack, is pretty crucial, I think, to what we could see happen trade-wise in February and March. So we'll be keeping a close eye on these ones, huh?
Yeah, before we know it, we're going to be talking serious trade deadline stuff.
Yeah.
And these stretch of games might really cement them in I think we're definitely 100% sellers because with the goaltending and stuff, man. I think some of those teams, they play pretty well. I think they have lately played Vegas pretty well, and they typically always play Toronto pretty well. Toronto might not have Austin Matthews, but Flyers got their own issues, so I really can't say for sure. Real quick, it's funny. I wanted to ask you a question, so I pulled up Michkov's stats, and if you take Gauthier's stats and you just erase the 5 goals and move everything down, Michkov has 12 goals, 17 assists for 29 points. Michkov had 5 goals, 12 assists for 17 points. It's funny. It's not even close. And it's, I believe, the same amount of games. Michkov has 36 games. What I say, I think Gauthier was 35. So I wanted to ask you, with the Flyers coming up on the midway point, now obviously Michkov missed a couple of games via benching. So at 36 games, let's say he misses 2 more games. So I think he was benched for 2 games. Is that right?
Yeah.
And that's the only reason why he missed. So say he only plays 78 games, which would, I guess, put him right around the halfway point right now, maybe give or take a game. He's got 29 points. If he were to stay on that pace, he would finish with 58 points. Would you be okay with that? That would be like 14 goals, 24 assists, something like that. I'm sorry, 24 goals. 24 goals and 34 assists. Is that something you'd be okay with? Or
yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I thought he was going to finish, like between 50, 60 points. Now he could still catch fire here. And
this is after a slump. I'm reading these numbers, really.
Yeah. So that's kind of like I was tempering expectations for him. Like we talked, I think in one of the past shows, I'd be happy. I'd be more than happy with, 50-point rookie season from Michkov. But I think he's shown he's capable of a lot more, but yeah, to answer your question, I'd be happy with 55, 60-point season, more than happy with 60. Like that'd be incredible in my opinion.
Yeah. I think that I would be fine with it, but I'd be like, man, he's so close to 60.
Yeah.
It's just different level. So, hey, hope he catches fire again. We're having a different conversation, but we are awfully close to the halfway point. So I figured by next show, we'll probably be over it. So figured I'd ask you.
Yeah, absolutely. Oakham, good night. See, duty calls. So have a good one. Okay. So we're a little bit over an hour into the show. We mentioned Flyers schedule. We'll be back tomorrow night for post-game show. The post-game show returns. Christmas break is over. I hope everybody had a happy and safe Christmas and Happy New Year. Thanks for tuning in to our show. As always, we really appreciate you guys. If you enjoyed the episode and you're watching on YouTube, remember to give us a like and a subscribe. It helps the algorithm, gets us in front of more eyes and ears, really helps out the channel. We'd appreciate that. If you're watching on Twitter, head on over to YouTube and do what we just asked. That's all we ask you to do. Hit a like and subscribe. Helps the algorithm. If you're listening to us as a podcast, listen to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Set alerts so you know when we drop a new show. And for all of our latest episodes, articles, and updates, head over to hwhockey.net. So for Jack, the 2024 Elite 16 champion, I'm Jim. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow night. Bye-bye.
See ya.